From that moment on, everything about my wedding planning changed. It was no longer just about the vows, the decorations, or the guest list. It became something bigger, a statement, a declaration, a moment that would live on long after the day had passed. The first thing I did the next morning was call my original wedding planner, Miranda. She had been working with couples for 15 years and had seen every kind of family drama imaginable. But when I explained what had happened and what I wanted to do, even she seemed taken aback. "You want to completely change everything?" she asked, and I could hear her flipping through what I assumed were my original plans. The venue, the catering, the flowers, everything? Everything, I confirmed. I want this wedding to be absolutely unforgettable. There was a pause, and then Miranda's voice took on a different quality. Excited, energized. "Okay, let's talk budget. What are we working with for absolutely unforgettable?" When I told her the new number Alex and I had settled on, I heard her intake of breath. "Oh, honey," she said, and I could practically hear her grinning through the phone. "We're going to create something magical. Tell me everything that happened." So I did. I found myself spilling the entire story to this woman I had only met twice before. The years of dismissive treatment, the casual cruelty of their response, the realization that I would never be enough for them. When I finished, Miranda was quiet for a long moment. "I have been planning weddings for 15 years, she said finally, "and I have never been more invested in making sure a celebration is absolutely perfect. We're going to create something that will take people's breath away." "I know this sounds petty," I started. "It doesn't sound petty," Miranda interrupted. "It sounds like you're finally ready to celebrate yourself the way you deserve to be celebrated. And frankly, after what you've told me about your parents, I think showing them what they missed is exactly the right thing to do." The venue was already secured, but everything else needed to be reimagined. Miranda had connections throughout the wedding industry, and within a week, she had lined up appointments with vendors who specialized in creating extraordinary celebrations. Our first meeting was with Marcus, a floral designer whose portfolio looked like something out of a high-end magazine. His studio was filled with exotic flowers I couldn't even name, and when he spoke about arrangements, it was with the passion of an artist discussing a masterpiece. "Tell me about your vision," he said after Miranda had given him the basic details of what we wanted. "I want people to feel like they've stepped into a dream," I told him, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the beauty surrounding us in his studio. "I want flowers that look like they're floating, cascading arrangements that take people's breath away. I want lighting that makes everything look magical." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, making notes on a tablet. "What's the inspiration behind this level of intensity? Most couples are looking for beautiful, but you're talking about transcendent." I hesitated, wondering how to explain without sounding vindictive. But Miranda jumped in. "She's proving a point," she said simply, "to people who made a very big mistake." Marcus looked at me with new understanding, and his expression shifted from professional interest to something more personal. "I like your style," he said with a grin. "Let's make some magic, and let's make sure whoever needs to see it really sees it." For the next 2 hours, Marcus walked us through ideas that were so far beyond what I had originally imagined that I kept having to remind myself this was actually happening. Arches of flowers that would create natural tunnels for guests to walk through. Ceiling installations that would make the reception space look like it was under a canopy of blooms. Centerpieces that incorporated lighting elements to create an ethereal glow. "This is the piece de resistance," Marcus said, showing us a photo on his tablet. A flower wall behind the head table, 12 feet high, 20 feet wide, made entirely of white roses, peonies, and baby's breath, with integrated lighting that will make it look like it's glowing from within. It will be the backdrop for all your reception photos. How much would something like that cost? I asked, bracing myself. When he told me, Alex reached over and squeezed my hand. "Do it," Alex said without hesitation. "All of it." "Are you sure?" I asked. "This is getting very expensive very quickly." "I'm sure," Alex replied. "When you look back at our wedding photos in 20 years, I want you to see something so beautiful it takes your breath away. And when your parents see those photos." Alex trailed off, but the implication was clear. Our next appointment was with Elena, a photographer whose work looked like fine art. Her portfolio was full of images that managed to be both candid and impossibly elegant, capturing not just what people looked like, but how they felt. "I understand you're looking for something special," Elena said as we sat in her studio, surrounded by enormous prints of her work. "We want every moment captured," I explained. "Every smile, every laugh, every dance. I want photos that tell the story of how much love was in that room." Elena nodded, studying Alex and me with the analytical eye of someone who specialized in capturing relationships. "I can see this is important to you," she said. "May I ask why?" "It helps me understand what story you want me to tell." I found myself explaining the situation again, and Elena's expression grew more serious as I spoke. "I see," she said when I finished. "So, in addition to documenting your celebration, you want to create a visual record of what it looks like when people choose to show up for someone they love." "Exactly," I said, impressed by how quickly she had understood. "I can work with that," Elena said. "I'm going to recommend that we do something a little unconventional. In addition to the standard wedding package, I'd like to create what I call a love story documentary. Throughout the day, I'll focus on capturing the faces of your guests, the moment they see the venue, their reactions during the ceremony, the joy on their faces during the reception. The final product will be a collection of images that shows not just your wedding, but the love that surrounded you." "That sounds perfect," Alex said immediately. "There's one more thing," Elena continued. "I'd like to put together a special album, the kind of thing that could be a coffee table book. Something so beautiful that when people flip through it, they'll understand immediately that this was an extraordinary celebration." The videographer, David, had a similar approach. Instead of just documenting the events of the day, he wanted to create what he called a cinematic experience. "I want to tell the story of your love," he explained as we met in his editing studio. "Not just the wedding day, but the journey that led you there. I'll interview some of your guests beforehand, capture their thoughts about your relationship, their excitement about celebrating with you. The final video will be something you could screen at a film festival." Every vendor we met with seemed to understand that this wasn't just about creating a beautiful wedding. It was about creating something that would serve as undeniable proof of how much love surrounded us, how worthy we were of celebration, how wrong my parents had been to dismiss it. The catering was the next piece of the puzzle. Instead of the simple buffet we had originally planned, we upgraded to a full-plated dinner with multiple courses. The tasting appointment turned into a 3-hour experience as the chef walked us through options that sounded like they belonged in a 5-star restaurant. For the cocktail hour, I'd recommend past hors d'oeuvres, the chef explained. Things like seared scallops with cauliflower puree, lamb lollipops with mint chimichurri, truffle mac, and cheese bites. Then for dinner, we could do a choice of filet mignon or Chilean sea bass, with seasonal vegetables and artisanal sides. "And dessert?" Alex asked. "Well, you'll have your wedding cake, of course, but I'd also recommend a dessert station. Chocolate fountains, individual tartlets, maybe a crepe station where we make them to order. Something interactive that gives your guests an experience." By the end of the appointment, our catering bill had tripled from the original estimate, but when I imagined my guests talking about the incredible food for years afterward, it felt worth every penny. The most emotional appointment was with the musicians. We had originally planned to hire a DJ, but Miranda suggested we consider a live band for the ceremony and a different band for the reception. "Live music creates an atmosphere that recorded music just can't match," she explained as we met with the leader of a string quartet. "When people hear those instruments in person, when they feel the music in their chests, it creates memories that last forever." The string quartet played a sample of what our processional might sound like, and I found myself crying in the middle of their studio. The music was so beautiful, so perfect, that it made the reality of what we were creating feel overwhelming. For the reception, I'd recommend something with more energy, Miranda continued, leading us to meet with a 12-piece band that specialized in weddings. Something that will get everyone dancing and create the kind of party people talk about for years. When the band played a sample set, even Alex, who is usually reserved about dancing, was moving to the music. "This is what our wedding should sound like," Alex said to me as the band finished their demonstration. "This is the soundtrack to the best night of our lives." Each decision built on the last, creating something that was so far beyond our original vision that sometimes I had to remind myself it was real. The invitations went from simple cardstock to hand-lettered creations on heavy paper with gold foil accents. The flowers evolved from basic centerpieces to installations that would transform the entire venue. The photography package expanded to include engagement photos, getting ready shots, and a second photographer to make sure no moment was missed. But the most meaningful changes weren't about the vendors or the decorations. They were about the people. I called my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, who had always been more of a mother figure to me than my actual mother. Linda had been quietly disapproving of my parents' treatment of me for years, but she had never directly confronted them about it. "I heard what happened," Linda said when I called her, her voice heavy with disappointment and anger. "I cannot believe they would do this to you. I'm so sorry, sweetheart." "Aunt Linda," I said, taking a deep breath, "I have a favor to ask. I know traditionally the father walks the bride down the aisle, but would you consider walking with me instead?" There was silence on the other end of the line, then the sound of Linda crying. "Oh, honey," she said through her tears, "I would be honored. I have always been so proud of you, and I can't think of anything I'd rather do." "Are you sure?" I asked. "I don't want to put you in an awkward position with the rest of the family." "You let me worry about the rest of the family," Linda said firmly. "Your parents made their choice. Now I'm making mine. I choose to stand by you, literally and figuratively." That conversation led to another realization. I didn't want to just replace my parents in the ceremony. I wanted to celebrate the people who had actually been there for me throughout my life. I called my childhood best friend Sarah, who had been my maid of honor from the beginning, and asked if she would be willing to give a speech at the reception. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked. "That's usually a parent thing. The people who should be giving speeches are the ones who have actually been proud of me," I said. "That's you. You've been celebrating my accomplishments since we were kids. You've been there for every important moment in my life. If anyone should be speaking at my wedding, it's you." Sarah was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. "You know what? I have a lot to say about how amazing you are. This is going to be the speech of a lifetime. I'm going to make sure everyone in that room knows exactly how lucky Alex is to marry you." I also asked Alex's father if he would be willing to speak. Alex's parents had welcomed me into their family from the moment we started dating, treating me with the kind of warmth and acceptance I had always craved from my own parents. "I would be honored," Alex's father said when I called him. "You're already our daughter in every way that matters. This just makes it official." The guest list evolved as well. Instead of the modest gathering we had originally planned, we expanded to include everyone who had played a meaningful role in our lives. College professors who had mentored me, childhood friends who had stayed in touch despite distance and time, colleagues who had become like family, extended relatives who had always made me feel valued and loved. As I worked on the invitations, I realized something beautiful was happening. Every person I was inviting was someone who had actively chosen to be part of my life. Every name on the list represented someone who had shown up for me in small and large ways over the years. My college roommate, Emma, who had driven 6 hours to help me move apartments when my parents claimed they were too busy. My mentor from my first job, Janet, who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself and had guided my career for over a decade. Alex's entire extended family, who had welcomed me with open arms from the very beginning. Cousins like Rachel and Michael, who had stayed in touch despite my parents' general family dysfunction. Friends like my yoga instructor Maria, who who had become a source of wisdom and support, and my neighbor Tom, who had been like a grandfather to me. I was building a wedding full of people who had shown up for me, and the guest list was becoming longer and more meaningful than I had ever imagined. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from Rachel that made my blood run cold. "I need to tell you something," Rachel said, her voice tense. "Your mom called me yesterday." My stomach dropped. What did she say? She was fishing for information about the wedding, asking where it was, what time it was, what you were planning. She kept asking if I thought there was still time for them to change their minds, but she never actually said she wanted to change her mind. I felt that familiar surge of anger mixed with something new, a kind of exhausted disappointment. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that if she wanted information about your wedding, she should call you herself and have a real conversation," Rachel said. "I also told her that what she and Uncle David did was cruel and that you deserved better." "You said that." "I've been wanting to say it for years," Rachel admitted. This was just the first time I had a good reason to actually say it out loud. And honestly, I think she was hoping I would just give her the details so she could show up without having to actually apologize or acknowledge what she did. The conversation with Rachel crystallized something for me. Even now, even after everything, my parents were trying to find a way to make this about them, to show up on their terms without taking responsibility for their actions. That night, I decided to write them a letter, not to invite them or to try to change their minds, but to make sure they understood exactly what they were choosing to miss. The letter took me 3 days to write. I went through draft after draft, trying to find the right balance between expressing my hurt and maintaining my dignity. I wrote versions that were angry, versions that were pleading, versions that were cold and detached. Finally, I settled on one that was honest without being cruel, clear without being bitter. "Dear Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about your decision not to attend my wedding, and I wanted to make sure you understand what you're choosing to miss. You're choosing to miss the moment when I marry the person who has shown me what real love looks like, someone who shows up for me, who celebrates my accomplishments, who never makes me question whether I'm worthy of their attention and affection. You're choosing to miss seeing me in my wedding dress, the one I've been dreaming about since I was a little girl playing dress up in your closet. You're choosing to miss walking me down the aisle, or seeing Aunt Linda do it instead because she was willing to step up when you stepped back. You're choosing to miss the speeches from people who have been proud of me, who have celebrated my accomplishments, who have shown up for me in ways you never have. You're choosing to miss hearing Sarah talk about our friendship, or Alex's father talk about how happy I make his child. You're choosing to miss the first dance where Alex and I will be surrounded by people who believe our love is worth celebrating. You're choosing to miss the moment when we cut the cake, when we toss the bouquet, when we dance until our feet hurt because we're so happy we can't contain ourselves. You're choosing to miss the chance to see me at my happiest. You're choosing to miss the opportunity to be part of something beautiful, something that represents everything good about love and commitment and family. I used to think that your presence would make my wedding complete. Now I realize that your absence is a choice that reflects your priorities, not mine. I am complete without you. I am loved without you. I am celebrated without you. But I want you to know what you're walking away from. I want you to understand that this isn't just about missing a party. This is about missing the chance to be part of your daughter's joy. I hope someday you'll realize what you've lost. Your daughter. I printed the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and then put it in my desk drawer. I never sent it. Instead, I kept it as a reminder to myself of what I was worth, of what they were choosing to give up, of how their decision reflected their character, not mine. 2 weeks before the wedding, the final details began falling into place like pieces of a perfect puzzle. The flowers arrived at the venue for the final walkthrough, and even the delivery team stopped to take pictures. Marcus had outdone himself. Cascading arrangements of white roses and peonies mixed with eucalyptus and baby's breath, with tiny lights woven throughout that made everything look like it was glowing from within. "This is incredible," Miranda said as we walked through the transformed space. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen anything more beautiful. The ceremony space looked like something from a fairy tale. The arch where Alex and I would exchange vows was covered in flowers that seemed to float in the air, and the aisle was lined with arrangements that created a natural corridor of blooms. The lighting had been positioned to create a soft, golden glow that would make everything look magical in photos. The reception space was even more breath. A wedding is meant to be one of the most cherished and celebrated moments in life, a gathering of loved ones, a symbol of commitment, a day that marks the beginning of a new journey. I had always imagined my wedding day would be filled with warmth, laughter, and the presence of my family standing proudly by my side, but my parents had other plans. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video. I had been hesitant to tell them about the wedding, unsure of how they would react. Our relationship had always been strained, filled with moments where they dismissed my accomplishments and overlooked my happiness. But still, I hoped that this time would be different. I hoped that, despite our differences, they would at least show up for me. Instead, their response came in the form of an emotionless, dismissive statement. We won't be attending. We don't see the point. It's not worth celebrating. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Not worth celebrating? At first, I thought I had misread it, that maybe there was an unspoken reason, a hidden meaning that softened the blow. But there wasn't. It was exactly as cruel and detached as it seemed. They weren't coming. Not because they were sick, not because they physically couldn't, simply because they didn't care. I sat in silence, gripping my phone, reading the words over and over again as my mind struggled to comprehend them. This wasn't just about missing an event. This was an active choice, a deliberate decision to dismiss one of the most important days of my life. For years, I had felt like an afterthought. In my family, my accomplishments had always been treated as lesser, my milestones brushed aside in favor of those they deemed more important. And now, faced with the most meaningful day of my life, they had confirmed what I had always feared. I wasn't a priority. I wasn't worth celebrating. A dull ache settled in my chest, followed swiftly by a searing wave of anger. I had spent my entire life trying to prove to them that I was worthy of their love, their pride, their support. I had tried to win their approval, hoping that if I worked hard enough, if I achieved enough, if I became enough, they would finally see me. But now I realized something. I would never be enough for them, and that was their failure, not mine. If they didn't want to celebrate my wedding, I wasn't going to beg them. I wasn't going to cry or plead or try to change their minds. Instead, I was going to make damn sure they never forgot what they had missed. The first person I called was my fiancé, Alex. My hands were still shaking as I dialed, and for a moment I wondered if I should even share this humiliation. But Alex and I had promised each other complete honesty, especially about the difficult things. "They're not coming," I said the moment Alex picked up, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a long pause, filled with the sound of Alex's workday in the background. Papers shuffling, the distant hum of office chatter that suddenly seemed to stop. "What do you mean they're not coming?" Alex's voice was careful, measured, like someone trying to make sure they heard correctly. "They said they don't see the point, that it's not worth celebrating." The words tasted bitter as I repeated them, each syllable like swallowing glass. That's a direct quote, by the way. Not worth celebrating. Are you serious? Alex's voice shifted from confusion to something I had rarely heard. Pure, protective fury. Who says that about their own child's wedding? What kind of parent? The kind I've always had, I interrupted, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. The kind who missed my college graduation because they had a dinner party to attend. The kind who forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. The kind who, my voice cracked. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be dumping all of this on you right now. Don't you dare apologize, Alex said, and I could hear movement on the other end of the line. The sound of a chair scraping, footsteps, a door closing. I just stepped into a conference room. Talk to me. Tell me everything. So I did. I told Alex about the text message, about reading it over and over, about the way my parents had phrased their rejection like they were declining a casual dinner invitation. I told Alex about all the other times they had made me feel small, invisible, unworthy of their attention or pride. I keep thinking about my high school graduation, I said, the words tumbling out faster now. They came to that, but they left during the reception to go to my cousin's baseball game, his regular season baseball game. And when I asked them about it later, my mom said, "Well, you already graduated. The ceremony was over." Jesus, Alex breathed. Or when I got the promotion last year, the one I had been working toward for 3 years, and I called to tell them, and my dad's response was, "That's nice, honey. Did you see that your brother got into that graduate program?" Like my accomplishment was just a stepping stone to talking about someone else. I was crying now, really crying, in a way I hadn't allowed myself to in years. I've spent my entire life trying to prove to them that I was worthy of their love, their pride, their support. And now, on what's supposed to be the most important day of my life, they've made it crystal clear that I'm still not worth their time. "I'm coming over," Alex said immediately. "Don't move. Don't do anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You don't have to leave work." "I'm leaving now," Alex said firmly. "This is more important than anything happening here." When Alex arrived, I was still sitting in the same spot on my couch, but I had moved beyond tears into a kind of numb shock. Alex took one look at my face and sat down next to me, pulling me into the kind of embrace that makes you realize how much you've been holding yourself together. "I'm so sorry," Alex whispered into my hair. "This is unbelievable. This is our wedding. How can they just—" "Because they've always been like this," I said, my voice muffled against Alex's shoulder. I should have expected it. I should have known better than to hope that a wedding would be different from anything else. Alex pulled back to look at me, hands on my shoulders. "No, you should never have to lower your expectations for your own parents. This isn't on you. This is completely on them." "But maybe they're right," I said, the doubt creeping in despite my anger. "Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe I'm being dramatic." "Stop," Alex said, more firmly than I had ever heard. "Don't you dare let them make you doubt yourself. This is our wedding. This is the day we're promising to spend our lives together, surrounded by people who love us. If they can't see how important that is, if they can't see how important you are, then that's their loss." We sat there for a while, Alex holding me while I processed the weight of their rejection. The silence was comfortable, healing in a way that conversation couldn't be. Finally, Alex asked the question that would change everything. "What do you want to do?" I looked at Alex, this person who had dropped everything to rush over when I needed support, who was asking what I wanted instead of telling me what I should feel, who had never once made me question my worth. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. "I want to throw the most incredible wedding anyone has ever seen," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I want to make it so beautiful, so perfect, so absolutely magical that they'll spend the rest of their lives knowing exactly what they chose to miss." Alex's eyes lit up with something between admiration and determination. "Now that sounds like a plan." "I'm serious," I continued, feeling something shift inside me. "I want everyone who comes to our wedding to have the most amazing time of their lives. I want the photographs to be stunning. I want the food to be incredible. I want the music to be perfect. I want every single detail to be so beautiful that people talk about it for years." And you want your parents to see all of it, Alex said, understanding immediately. I want them to see exactly what they chose to walk away from, I confirmed. I want them to understand the magnitude of what they dismissed as not worth celebrating. Alex was quiet for a moment, and I worried that maybe this plan sounded petty, vindictive. But then Alex smiled, not just any smile, but the kind of smile that had made me fall in love in the first place. You know what? Alex said, they have no idea what they've just unleashed. When you decide to do something, you don't mess around. This is going to be the wedding of the century. The validation in Alex's voice, the immediate support and understanding, made me realize something important. This was what love looked like. This was what it meant to have someone in your corner. Someone who believed in you especially when the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally had let you down. Are you sure you're okay with this? I asked. I mean, this is going to be expensive, and it's going to be a lot of work. And honestly, part of my motivation is pretty much just spite at this point. Alex laughed, a real laugh that made my chest feel lighter for the first time since I'd received my parents' text. First of all, spite is an excellent motivator for party planning. Second of all, I've been saving money for our wedding for 3 years, and I can't think of a better way to spend it than making sure everyone we care about has the most incredible time celebrating our love. Even if it means proving a point to my parents. Especially if it means proving a point to your parents, Alex said. They need to learn that their daughter is worth celebrating, even if they don't have the sense to see it themselves. That night, we sat on my couch with my laptop, completely reimagining our wedding plans. What had started as a modest celebration for 60 people at a local country club transformed into something entirely different. Okay, Alex said, pulling up Pinterest on the laptop. Show me what absolutely magical looks like to you. For the next 3 hours, we went down rabbit holes of wedding inspiration photos. Fairy lights strung through trees, elaborate floral installations, venues that looked like something out of a movie. Every time I hesitated about the cost or the extravagance, Alex would remind me that this was our day, our celebration, our chance to create something beautiful. Look at this place, I said, clicking on a photo of a historic estate with rolling hills and gardens that seemed to stretch into infinity. It's probably completely out of our budget, but nothing, Alex said. Call them tomorrow. Let's at least find out. Alex, venues like this probably cost. Whatever it costs, we'll figure it out, Alex said. We've both been working and saving for years. We don't take expensive vacations. We don't buy designer clothes. We don't drive fancy cars. If there's ever been a time to spend money on something that matters, this is it. I stared at the photo of the estate, imagining our ceremony in those gardens, our reception in those elegant ballrooms. It was so far beyond what I had originally envisioned that it felt almost impossible. What if we can't afford it? I asked. Then we'll find something else that's just as beautiful, Alex said practically. But what if we can? The next morning, I called the estate. The woman who answered the phone had a warm voice and seemed genuinely excited when I explained that we were looking for a wedding venue. We do have one Saturday available in your time frame, she said after checking their calendar. Would you like to schedule a tour? Before we do that, I said, bracing myself, could you give me an idea of your pricing? I want to make sure we're in the right ballpark. When she quoted the price, my heart sank. It was more than twice what we had originally budgeted for our entire wedding, just for the venue. I understand that's a significant investment, the woman said, seeming to sense my hesitation. But I will say that couples who choose to have their weddings here often tell us it was the best money they ever spent. We include quite a bit in that price: tables, chairs, linens, basic lighting, coordination services, and exclusive use of the grounds for the entire day. Can I call you back? I asked. Of course. And if you'd like to see the space, tours are complimentary. Sometimes seeing a venue in person helps couples understand the value proposition. When I told Alex about the phone call, I expected some hesitation, some practical concerns about the budget. Instead, Alex was quiet for a moment, then said, "Let's go look at it." "Alex, it's so expensive." "Let's just go look," Alex repeated. "We don't have to decide anything today, but let's see what we'd be paying for." The estate was even more beautiful in person than it had been in the photos. Rolling hills covered in mature trees, gardens that looked like they had been designed by fairy tale illustrators, and a main house that managed to be both grand and welcoming. The woman who showed us around, Margaret, had been coordinating weddings there for over a decade, and her enthusiasm was infectious. "This is our ceremony garden," she said, leading us to a space that took my breath away. "We can accommodate up to 200 guests here, with the couple exchanging vows under our arbor there, with the hills as your backdrop." I could picture it immediately, Alex and me, surrounded by flowers and lights, with everyone we loved watching as we promised to spend our lives together. The vision was so clear and so perfect that it made my chest ache. "And this is our main ballroom for receptions," Margaret continued, leading us into a space with floor-to-ceiling windows, hardwood floors, and chandeliers that looked like they belonged in a palace. "It's incredible," Alex said quietly, and I could tell that Alex was picturing the same thing I was. Our friends and family dancing under those chandeliers, celebrating our love in a space that felt magical. "I know the investment can seem daunting," Margaret said gently, "but I always tell couples that your wedding day happens once. The photos and memories last forever, and there's something to be said for celebrating your love in a space that reflects how special it is." As we drove home, Alex and I were both quiet, processing what we had seen. "It's too much money," I said finally. "Maybe," Alex agreed. "But did you see your face when we were standing in that ceremony garden?" I had to admit that I had felt something in that space, a sense of rightness, of possibility, of magic that I hadn't felt at any of the other venues we had looked at. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," Alex continued, "about wanting to create something beautiful, something that shows your parents what they're missing. That place, that's the kind of place where you create memories that last forever. But the money—" "Let me show you something," Alex said, pulling up a banking app on the phone. "This is how much I've saved for our wedding over the past 3 years." The number on the screen made my eyes widen. "Alex, I had no idea you had saved that much." "I've been putting away money every month since we got engaged," Alex explained. "I wanted to make sure we could have the wedding we dreamed of, whatever that looked like. And you've been saving too, right?" I nodded. I had been contributing to a wedding fund as well, though not quite as aggressively as Alex had been. "So between the two of us, we have enough for the venue," Alex said. "It would mean adjusting our budget for other things, but it's doable." "Are you sure?" I asked. "This feels like such a huge decision." Alex pulled over and turned to look at me. "I have never been more sure of anything. You deserve to have the wedding of your dreams. You deserve to celebrate our love in a place that feels as special as what we have together. And honestly, the idea of your parents seeing photos of our incredible wedding and realizing what they chose to miss, that's worth every penny." That afternoon, I called Margaret back and put down a deposit on the estate. From that moment on, everything about my wedding planning changed. It was no longer just about the vows, the decorations, or the guest list. It became something bigger, a statement, a declaration, a moment that would live on long after the day had passed. The first thing I did was call my wedding planner, Miranda. She had been working with couples for 15 years and had seen every kind of family drama imaginable. "I need to change everything," I told her during our emergency meeting the next day. "I want this wedding to be absolutely unforgettable." Miranda raised an eyebrow. "What's the budget looking like for absolutely unforgettable?" "Whatever it takes," I said, and I meant it. I had been saving for years, and Alex, and I had been conservative with our initial plans. But now I was ready to invest in making a statement. "Tell me what happened," Miranda said gently, and I found myself spilling the entire story. When I finished, her expression had shifted from professional curiosity to genuine indignation. "Oh, honey," she said, shaking her head. "We're going to make this wedding so spectacular that people will be talking about it for decades." We completely scrapped the original venue. Instead of the modest country club I had initially booked, Miranda found us an estate that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Rolling hills, a mansion with floor-to-ceiling windows, and gardens that seemed to stretch into infinity. The price made my eyes water, but I didn't hesitate. "This is it," I said, standing in the main ballroom as late afternoon light streamed through the windows. "This is where we're getting married." The vendor meetings became a whirlwind of luxury. The florist I had originally chosen was lovely, but now I wanted someone who could create installations that would take people's breath away. I found Marcus, a designer who had done arrangements for celebrity weddings. "I want people to feel like they've stepped into a dream," I told him as we walked through the venue grounds. "I want cascade arrangements that look like waterfalls of flowers. I want lighting that makes everything look magical." Marcus grinned. "I like your style. What's the inspiration?" "Proving a point," I said, and he laughed. "The best kind of wedding," he replied. "Let's make some magic." Every decision became intentional, purposeful. The photographer wasn't just someone to capture moments. She was someone whose work would tell a story. The videographer wasn't just documenting the day. He was creating a film that would convey the joy, the love, the celebration that my parents had chosen to reject. But the most meaningful changes weren't about the vendors or the venue. They were about the people. I called my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, who had always been more of a mother figure to me than my actual mother. Linda had been quietly disapproving of my parents' treatment of me for years, but she had never directly confronted them about it. "I heard about what happened," Linda said when I called her. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I can't believe they would do this." "Aunt Linda," I said, "I have a favor to ask. I know traditionally the father walks the bride down the aisle, but would you consider walking with me instead?" There was silence on the other end of the line, then the sound of Linda crying. "Oh, honey," she said through her tears. "I would be honored. I have always been so proud of you, and I can't think of anything I'd rather do." That conversation led to another realization. I didn't want to just replace my parents in the ceremony. I wanted to celebrate the people who had actually been there for me. I called my childhood best friend Sarah, who had been my maid of honor, and asked her to also give a speech at the reception. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked. "That's usually a parent thing." "The people who should be giving speeches are the ones who have actually been proud of me," I said. "That's you." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "You know what? I have a lot to say about how amazing you are. This is going to be the speech of a lifetime." As the guest list evolved, I realized something beautiful was happening. Every person I invited was someone who had actively chosen to be part of my life. My college roommate who had driven 6 hours to help me move apartments. My mentor from my first job who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Alex's parents who had welcomed me into their family with open arms from the very beginning. Cousins who had stayed in touch despite my parents' general family dysfunction. Friends who had supported me through every major life decision. I was building a wedding full of people who had shown up for me, and the guest list was becoming longer and more meaningful than I had ever imagined. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from my cousin Rachel, who had been one of the first to RSVP yes. "I need to tell you something," Rachel said. "Your mom called me yesterday." My stomach dropped. "What did she say?" "She was fishing for information about the wedding. Asking where it was, what time it was, what you were planning. I think she was trying to figure out if she could just show up without having to actually apologize or acknowledge what she did." I felt that familiar surge of anger. Even now, even after everything, they were trying to find a way to make this about them. To show up on their terms without taking responsibility for their actions. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her that if she wanted information about your wedding, she should call you herself and have a real conversation," Rachel said. I also told her that what she and Uncle David did was cruel and that you deserved better. You said that. I've been wanting to say it for years, Rachel admitted. This was just the first time I had a good reason to actually say it out loud. That call gave me an idea. I decided to write a letter to my parents, not to invite them or to try to change their minds, but to make sure they understood exactly what they were choosing to miss. The letter took me 3 days to write. I went through draft after draft, trying to find the right balance between expressing my hurt and maintaining my dignity. The final version was 2 pages long, and it said everything I had been wanting to say to them for years. Dear Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about your decision not to attend my wedding, and I wanted to make sure you understand what you're choosing to miss. You're choosing to miss the moment when I marry the person who has shown me what real love looks like. You're choosing to miss seeing me in my wedding dress, the one I've been dreaming about since I was a little girl. You're choosing to miss the speeches from people who have been proud of me, who have celebrated my accomplishments, who have shown up for me in ways you never have. You're choosing to miss the first dance, where Alex and I will be surrounded by people who believe our love is worth celebrating. You're choosing to miss the moment when we cut the cake, when we toss the bouquet, when we dance until our feet hurt because we're so happy we can't contain ourselves. Most importantly, you're choosing to miss the chance to see me at my happiest. You're choosing to miss the opportunity to be part of something beautiful, something that represents everything good about love and commitment and family. I used to think that your presence would make my wedding complete. Now I realize that your absence is a choice that reflects your priorities, not mine. I am complete without you. I am loved without you. I am celebrated without you. But I want you to know what you're walking away from. I want you to understand that this isn't just about missing a party. This is about missing the chance to be part of your daughter's joy. I hope someday you'll realize what you've lost. Your daughter. I never sent the letter. Instead, I kept it as a reminder to myself of what I was worth, of what they were choosing to give up. The week before the wedding, the final details fell into place like pieces of a perfect puzzle. The flowers arrived at the venue for the rehearsal, and even the delivery team stopped to take pictures. Marcus had outdone himself. Cascading arrangements of white roses and peonies mixed with eucalyptus and baby's breath, with tiny lights woven throughout that made everything look like it was glowing from within. The rehearsal dinner was intimate and beautiful. Alex's parents had insisted on hosting it, and they had chosen a private dining room at a restaurant overlooking the water. As I looked around the table at the faces of people who had chosen to be there, who had rearranged their schedules and traveled from across the country to celebrate with us, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Alex's father stood up to give a toast, and his words caught me completely off guard. I want to say something to our daughter-in-law-to-be, he said, looking directly at me. We know that some people who should be here tonight are not here, and we want you to know that their absence is not a reflection of your worth. You are an incredible person who has brought so much joy into our son's life and into our lives. Tomorrow, when you walk down that aisle, you're not just marrying Alex. You're officially becoming part of our family, and we couldn't be more proud or more honored. I started crying right there at the table, and Alex's mother immediately got up to hug me. We've always thought of you as our daughter, she whispered in my ear. Tomorrow just makes it official. The wedding day arrived in a whirlwind of excitement, a symphony of laughter and joy filling the air as guests arrived, dressed in elegant attire. The venue was exactly as I had envisioned, golden lights casting a soft glow over the carefully arranged floral displays, the gentle rustling of leaves adding an ethereal touch to the atmosphere. But the morning started with an unexpected moment of vulnerability. As I was getting ready, surrounded by my bridesmaids and the hair and makeup team, I found myself staring at my reflection in the mirror and suddenly missing my mother with an intensity that caught me off guard. Sarah noticed immediately. What's wrong? I always imagined my mom would be here for this part, I admitted, my voice shaking slightly, helping me get ready, fixing my veil, telling me I look beautiful. The room went quiet for a moment, and then Aunt Linda stepped forward. "Can I tell you something?" she said, taking my hands. "Your mother is missing out on seeing how absolutely radiant you look right now. She's missing out on seeing how strong and brave and beautiful you've become. But more than that, she's missing out on being the mother you deserve to have." Linda paused, reaching up to adjust my veil. "I can't replace her, and I wouldn't try to. But I can tell you that I am so incredibly proud of the woman you've become, and I am honored to be here with you on your wedding day." By the time she finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. My makeup artist had to do some quick touch-ups, but the moment had grounded me. I was surrounded by love, even if it wasn't the love I had originally hoped for. The ceremony itself was everything I had dreamed of and more. As I walked down the aisle with Aunt Linda, I saw the faces of everyone who had chosen to be there. My college professors who had mentored me, childhood friends who had driven across states to be present, colleagues who had become family, Alex's entire extended family, beaming as if I were their own daughter. But the most powerful moment came during the vows. Alex and I had written our own, and when it was Alex's turn to speak, the words were so personal and specific that I could feel the love radiating from every person in attendance. "I promise to choose you every single day," Alex said, voice strong and clear. "I promise to show up for you in the way that you deserve. I promise to celebrate your victories, support you through challenges, and never let you doubt how worthy you are of love." The emphasis on showing up and choosing wasn't lost on anyone who knew our story. Alex was making a promise that directly contrasted with what my parents had chosen to do. When it was my turn, I looked out at the faces of everyone who had gathered to celebrate with us, and I made my own promise. "I promise to build a life with you surrounded by people who choose to love us," I said. "I promise to create the kind of family that shows up for each other, that celebrates each other's joy, and that never makes love conditional." The cheers that erupted when we kissed were deafening, a chorus of celebration that seemed to fill the entire estate. As we walked back down the aisle as a married couple, I felt something I had never experienced before. The complete certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with exactly the people who were supposed to be there. The reception was a celebration unlike anything I had ever experienced. The speeches were heartfelt and hilarious. Sarah's maid of honor speech brought down the house when she told the story of how Alex and I had met, including the embarrassing detail about how I had accidentally walked into a glass door while staring at Alex across a coffee shop. And that, Sarah concluded, is when I knew Alex was the one. Because instead of laughing at her, Alex immediately rushed over to make sure she was okay and asked if she wanted to get ice cream to make sure she hadn't gotten a concussion. Who does that? Someone who's going to spend the rest of their life taking care of the person they love. Alex's best man told stories about their friendship that had the entire room laughing. And then he got serious for a moment. "I've watched Alex with a lot of people over the years," he said, "but I've never seen Alex light up the way they do when talking about their now spouse. And more than that, I've never seen anyone make Alex want to be a better person just by existing. That's true love, and we're all here to celebrate it." The professional photographer and videographer moved through the celebration like artists, capturing every moment of joy. I had specifically requested that they focus on the faces of the guests, the laughter, the dancing, the pure happiness that filled the air. I wanted to capture not just the beauty of the day, but the love that surrounded us. As the evening progressed, I found myself in conversation with relatives I hadn't seen in years, all of whom had made the effort to be there. My cousin Michael, who had flown in from Seattle, pulled me aside during the dancing. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I talked to your dad last week." My heart stopped. "What?" "He called me asking about the wedding. He seemed, I don't know, confused maybe? Like he was starting to realize what he had done. He asked me if I thought it was too late to change his mind." I stared at Michael, processing this information. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that if he wanted to repair this, he needed to call you directly and have a real conversation about what he had done wrong. I told him that showing up at the last minute without acknowledging the hurt he caused would just make things worse. And he said he would think about it. But honestly, I think he was hoping I would just give him the details, so he could show up without having to actually apologize. I felt a familiar surge of frustration, but it was different this time. Instead of the deep, aching disappointment I usually felt when dealing with my parents' behavior, I felt something closer to pity. They were so committed to being right, so unable to admit fault, that they were willing to miss out on their own daughter's wedding rather than have an honest conversation about their actions. You know what? I said to Michael, I'm glad he didn't come. I'm glad he didn't call, because this day has been absolutely perfect without him. And I meant it. As I looked around at the reception, at the faces of people who were genuinely happy to be there, who had chosen to celebrate with us, who had made our joy their priority, I realized that my parents' absence hadn't diminished the day at all. If anything, it had highlighted how much love I actually had in my life. The dancing went late into the night. Alex and I had our first dance to a song we had chosen together, and as we swayed in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by string lights and flowers and the faces of people who loved us, I felt complete in a way I had never experienced before. How are you feeling? Alex whispered in my ear as we danced. Perfect, I said, and I meant it. This is perfect. No regrets. I looked around at the celebration surrounding us. The only regret I have is that it took me this long to realize that I don't need their approval to be happy. As the evening wound down, guests began to approach us with their goodbyes, and the comments were overwhelming. People kept saying it was the most beautiful wedding they had ever attended, the most joyful celebration, the most love they had ever felt in one room. This is what a wedding should be, Alex's grandmother said as she hugged me goodbye. Pure joy, pure love, no drama, no stress, just celebration. After the last guest had left and the vendors had finished cleaning up, Alex and I sat on the steps of the venue, still in our wedding clothes, watching the sun rise over the gardens where we had just gotten married. We did it, Alex said, taking my hand. We did, I agreed. And it was perfect. A few days after the wedding, I sent my parents a package wrapped in soft gold ribbon. Inside was a carefully compiled album of photographs, each image a testament to the beauty of the day. Alongside it, a USB drive containing the wedding video capturing every heartfelt speech, every dance, every moment they had refused to be part of. The final piece was a letter, short, honest, and impossible to ignore. I told them exactly what their absence had meant, how their decision had hurt, how I had once thought my happiness depended on their presence, and then with unwavering certainty, I wrote the words they needed to read. This was the happiest day of my life, and you weren't there. Not because you couldn't be, but because you chose not to be. I hope you see now what you missed. I hope it was worth it. Days passed without a response, and I wondered if they would simply ignore it, bury their guilt beneath excuses and indifference. Then, late one evening, my phone buzzed. My mother's name appeared on the screen, her message short, but laden with regret. We watched the video. We saw everything. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. Then came another message from my father. This time we made a mistake. We should have been there. I don't know what we were thinking. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight of their regret. They had finally seen, finally understood, and finally admitted that they had been wrong. But as I stared at the screen, reading their words, I realized something. I didn't need their validation anymore. My wedding had been perfect without them. My joy had flourished in their absence. They were the ones who had lost something that day, not me. From that moment forward, they made an effort to repair the damage they had done. They reached out more, attended family gatherings they had previously ignored, tried to make up for the years they had spent dismissing my happiness. I allowed them back in slowly, cautiously, but never blindly. Their absence had taught me an invaluable lesson. Love, real love, is about showing up. And on the most important day of my life, they had failed. They had chosen to stay away, believing my happiness wasn't worth their time. But now they would live with the weight of what they had missed, knowing that they had chosen to walk away from something truly extraordinary. My wedding had been a defining moment, not because of their absence, but because of the people who had been there. And while I had let go of the pain they had caused, I knew one thing for certain. They would never forget what they had missed. Not for a single day, not for the rest of their lives. And that in itself was justice enough.